let's talk about the debates. Today was deadline day, and only 10 candidates qualified. So it's going to be a much smaller debate field than we have previously seen. But there is controversy in this. Now, you always have candidates that will pitch a fit when they don't qualify for the debate stage and they get mad and everything else. However, Tulsi Gabbard kind of has a point. So today, Tulsi Gabbard failed to reach the 2% threshold in 2 polls that were released. Now, again, today's the final day to qualify for the debate. That's the 3rd debate next month. Gabbard and Tom Steyer, the billionaire former hedge fund investor from California, have both been on the cusp of making the debates, and their supporters had hoped that the polls from USA Today and Quinnipiac would push them over the edge. However, both received 0 to 1% in both polls. They needed 2. Gabbard surpassed the threshold of 130,000 individual donors and achieved 2% in 2 out of the 4 required polls. If she stays in the race, she can count this towards qualifying for the October debate, which has the same requirements. But here's where things get a little interesting, okay? Now, again, some of this is going to come off as just complaining because you're almost there and you didn't quite make it, and this obviously could mean the end of your campaign. Others might be a little bit that she took down Kamala Harris. You realize that Kamala Harris has not bounced back in the polls since Tulsi Gabbard assassinated her at the last debate. And I say the assassinated bit because Kamala Harris then pushed a conspiracy theory after that debate that Tulsi Gabbard was a Russian agent. Let's see. At the 2nd Democratic presidential debate at the end of July, Representative Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat of Hawaii, attacked California Senator Kamala Harris, sending her plunging in the polls immediately afterwards. After the first debate, Kamala Harris surged. She had that really good exchange with Joe Biden. The second debate, Tulsi Gabbard obliterated her, and she has not recovered since. Now, I want you to understand, as I've been telling you for this entire process, the polls right now don't mean much. And in fact, one of the top pollsters came out today and said, I wouldn't put much stock in our polls this early. So even though they do the polls and you have to have some data to go on, even the pollsters are saying, yeah, they're not really accurate this early out. So anyway, as of Tuesday, Gabbard is still being excluded from the next Democratic debate. One might wonder why. Now, the simple answer to that is she doesn't meet the qualifications that the Democratic National Committee set. And today she failed to meet that standard. But there's something else to this that has people thinking that there might be a little bit of a conspiracy happening here. For the record, I don't know that I necessarily buy into this, but I thought that the argument was interesting, so I'm passing it on to all of you. Let's see. That was August 20th. Okay, so I'm just going to remind you, August 20th. Okay, The Nation, August 20th. While Harris experienced a major polling bump following her breakout first debate, during which she confronted former Vice President Joe Biden on busing, she's been slipping ever since the second debate in July. In the latest poll from CNN and SSRS released on Tuesday, she's down to 5% support, a 12-point drop from a post-debate June poll that had her at 17% support. I went over the state and national polling with you. I think it was the beginning of last week, so it's about a week ago. I went over the RCP average for that, and she's not doing great. She's not doing horrible, but she's not doing great. She's certainly not doing very well. Right now, your front runners are Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. Those are your front runners. It used to be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and Elizabeth Warren has supplanted Kamala Harris after Tulsi Gabbard assassinated her. Let's see. What do we have here? Monmouth on Monday has Harris at 8%. Morning Consult has her at 8%. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. So Nate Silver, who's over at 538.com, on Monday, Gabbard's campaign has claimed that she's received at least 2% support in more than 20 polls released since the second debate, but only 2 of those surveys are from pollsters sanctioned by the DNC. Okay, so there's 20 polls, but only 2 of them are actually sanctioned by the DNC. But she did get 2% in both of those polls. Now, among her campaign's complaints are that the DNC's rules about which polls will be counted are not very consistent. Some highly rated polling organizations were left off of the DNC's list, and some surveys were excluded despite being sponsored by notable media organizations. For example, state-level polls conducted by online pollster YouGov on behalf of CBS News have been counted, which is approved by the DNC, while national YouGov polls sponsored by The Economist have not. Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard's campaign is looking at this and going, wait a minute, hold on a second. If the local YouGov poll, which works with CBS News, is being counted by the DNC, why isn't the national YouGov poll with The Economist being counted? You're counting one poll from this organization. Why aren't you counting the other poll from that organization? And there's some valid points there, I guess. Michael Tracy, who's an independent journalist, he went on with Tucker Carlson. He says, as I mentioned in an article that I wrote this week in Real Clear Politics, Gabbard has gotten over the required polling threshold in two separate polls in two separate early primary states. The Boston Globe is a newspaper with the widest circulation in New Hampshire, and the Post and Courier is the newspaper with the widest circulation in South Carolina. Gabbard has gotten placed at 2% or more in polls published by those two newspapers, but the DNC, in its bizarre, mysterious, infinite wisdom, has decreed again arbitrarily that those polls are not approved. So that's where you start seeing, oh, are we looking at another Bernie situation here? Is Tulsi Gabbard, is she the odd person out? And is she the odd person out because she took Kamala Harris, the superstar of the Democratic Party, that she took her out in the second debate? Maybe. It's kind of interesting. So you've got the biggest newspapers in New Hampshire and South Carolina, and they have conducted polls. Again, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. Those are the big three that you start off with. So in New Hampshire and in South Carolina, in the biggest papers in those states, Tulsi Gabbard is polling above the 2% threshold to qualify for the debate that is going to be happening. But the DNC says, yeah, those polls don't count. They counted the other two polls where she isn't polling at 2%. So from Tulsi Gabbard's perspective, she's like, well, I'm meeting the threshold in all of these other ones, including in the two biggest newspapers in the first three, out of two of the first three primary states, and I'm not being counted. What gives? And so some people are wondering if maybe this has something to do with what she did to Kamala Harris. So a lot of people are looking at it and going, this appears to be another DNC trick. The other way to look at it is the DNC set rules. I don't know when they finalize the list of what polls they would approve and everything else in this process. But if it was approved in some time ago, then okay. Tulsi Gabbard didn't meet the benchmarks, and according to the DNC's rules right now, she didn't meet those benchmarks. But she is meeting those benchmarks in a lot of other places that the DNC is just not accepting. And some of those places are very legitimate. Very reputable polling firms, and two of the largest newspapers in two of those big primary states. So she has an argument, but at the end of the day, she doesn't qualify for this third debate. Now, if she stays in this thing, she can use these polls to help qualify for the fourth debate.